Okay, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll give a few minutes to folks who are joining us from around the world. We've got a great conversation lined up for you all today. I'm joined by my industry colleague, Ben Kaywood. Ben, thanks for helping facilitate this conversation with me.
Appreciate it, Ashton. Yeah, no, I think you said give everybody a minute to jump on. Like the whole industry uses Teams, not Zoom. So like you're going to need to wait at least another like 4 or 5 minutes, I think. So
Yeah, I like to count down in seconds, even if it means like counting down 133 seconds.
oh,
It's like every moment counts, right?
mm,
All right. We have a few others here as well. We have Steve from Robert Half Executive Search. We've got Goddard from Boyden. We have Breck Armstrong, CIO of Boyden as well, joining us for this very, I'd say, intimate conversation that we're about to have on automation. This roundtable that feels almost like friends sitting by the beach talking about executive search stuff.
definitely missing my pina colada right now. I think that's the key ingredient that's going to make this go a lot smoother. But yeah, we can save that for later.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, we'll give just I'd say another 20 seconds or so for folks to join, and then we'll get started. Adam, will this recording be sent out? Absolutely, it will. As you're joining in, I like for everyone to know as well. Hey, feel free to let us know where you're joining from, your name, of course, and be ready to participate in the conversation. So as we're digging into some areas about automation and some of the use cases, if you have comments in the chat section, go ahead and plug those in. If you have questions as we're going along that you like to ask, some folks from the roundtable, feel free to direct your questions towards the chat, and Ben and I will be looking at that chat. And Jocelyn, who is our marketing extraordinaire, Jocelyn, thanks so much for making this all possible, by the way, can help surface some of those questions for us to ask as we go along. So everybody, don't be shy. So if you can let us know where you're joining from, that'll be so awesome. And if you have some questions along the way, bring it on. Everybody's ready. Hey, Courtney in DC. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, shall we get started, friends? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So just a couple of housekeeping bits before we actually dig into the conversation. Look, the session will be recorded and it's going to be shared afterwards. Everybody has joined on mute, but I invite you to ask as many questions as you wish and provide as many comments as you wish. Treat that chat area like the Twitterverse or X verse. I don't know what it's called now, but go ahead and you can contribute your commentary there, and would really love for everybody to participate in this conversation. So we're keeping this conversation slide free, as I mentioned before. Quite intimate. We are at a time when automation, AI, these are topics that are being discussed at the most senior levels within executive search firms, and everybody has their ideas, their interpretation of what that means, how they wish to implement this as well. And so what Ben and I have done, we've gathered a number of leaders from some search firms who are in the progress of figuring it out and doing a good job in doing so. So I want to give a moment for Ben to introduce himself, and then we can just have everybody else introduce themselves. And as I said before, very open conversation about how we can implement automation while we still have in mind that in executive search, it's all about the white glove service that we're delivering to the executives in our network. So Ben, I hand over the mic to you.
Yeah, cheers, Ashton. So, Ben, I head up the sales operation here at Sourcewell over in EMEA. And having spent 12 years in the recruitment industry, four of which have been at been at Sourcewell. Yeah, I've seen an awful lot, and implementing a technology like Sourcewell with its automation and AI functionality and features, you get into some really interesting conversation. You start to really unpick some of the challenges that these businesses face when they're trying to become more efficient and effective, but also don't want to lose the white glove treatment that they're able to provide to their candidates and clients. So yeah, can't wait for this conversation. I'm buzzing to hear what's said. I'll pass over to Breck.
Thanks, Ben. Really excited to be part of the conversation as well. My name is Breck Armstrong. Had the honor of serving as CIO at Boyden over the last 18 years. Maybe
jump in next, if that's okay. Yeah. My name's Steve Ankney. I've been like Breck. I'm very excited to be a part of this. Automation and all of these different technologies are something I'm very passionate about, both funny enough, professionally and personally. But I oversee our execution team here at Robert Half Executive Search, and so a big part of my position is helping to understand how we provide that white glove service to our clients. And Kari, you're up.
Perfect. So thank you. My name is Kari Hernandez. I'm a principal at Boyden. I'm not a tech expert like Breck and Steve or anyone on this call, but I'm the user that loves asking Breck for new tools. So hopefully I can provide some user perspective. I love asking the tough questions to the technologists and kind of to really understand how can we really apply AI in a way that help us to automate the back office work so we can spend more time with candidates and clients.
So as we're talking strategy, kind of you're the one who keeps us honest and said this is how it works in the real world, right?
Exactly.
I can attest that she does. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So first, I want to almost like calibrate with this term automation, and I know that there's some definitions of it that really cross paths with AI, but like if we all take a moment to like define what automation means to us personally, I'd love for that to again, just help focus the convo, because there's so much that we want to talk about in its implementation, defining challenges, and all that. So stay quiet, Steve. If we can just like kick it off with you, what's automation to you and to Robert Half Executive Search?
So I'm going to go one step further, and I'll just say that my love for it started actually from a personal angle. So for those of you that are familiar with automation tools, the first place I was introduced was actually through IFTTT, which is if this, then that. It's an automation service that you could be a part of. And so for my personal use, I found it really fun that I could do things like when I would hit a certain spot with my car, that the lights in my house would turn on. And so as I start to implement things like that at my household, I started looking at it from an angle of how do we do that in the workplace? And so to me, it's sort of, if you do X, how do you manage Y? Can X impact Y? Can Y do something to Z? And sort of automating that entire process, so that way someone's job, who might be to do 15 different things, might be able to get automated down to 5 things, which then comes back to, as Kari mentioned, being able to spend more time with our clients and our candidates.
I love that. If this and that, Ben, that sounds like it's like straight out of like a Sourcewell or Invenius automation, like wheelhouse, right?
Yeah, I think hopefully we're a little bit more advanced than that, but yeah, I think the if then that is definitely definitely a good starting point for a lot of these conversations.
Got it. How about you? Automation, what's it mean?
So I guess to me, it just means that my life is easier. To me, automation means just being able to, instead of spending, a day sending emails, doing data entry, taking my notes in a pad, I want to be able to simplify my process. So most of my time is, again, it's just spent with candidates and clients, because if I think as a recruiter, what makes my clients happy is when I tell them I talked to 20 candidates this week, not that I spent 20 hours doing data entry.
Love that. Love that. So freeing up yourself to do the work that really matters. Yeah, Breck, from a CIO perspective, I'm interested to hear this.
Yeah. So I know, building on what Kari had said, I feel like we've always attempted at Boyden to delight our staff and colleagues to the extent we can. And technology isn't always designed to do that. as an organization, the enterprise wants data and information and efficiency that is not always supported by what it actually means, which is someone sitting behind a computer entering information into fields and doing things. And I think there's a lot of opportunity with automation to streamline that so people feel less burdened by the administrative aspects and can focus back on doing what really is going to be meaningful for their clients, which is, finding the best candidate and putting them forward as quickly as possible. So that's always been our strategy: is to find ways of taking the burden away while still maintaining the insight and information that's really necessary for the organization to succeed from a business perspective.
You mentioned a really interesting word there around opportunity, and we, of course, Ben could chime in on this. We have a very I'd say biased view of what that means, and from our perspective. But Breck, since you were the last one to speak, I'm volunteering you. Like you mentioned opportunity. What does opportunity mean in the world of automation? Like, could you just share a couple of use cases where maybe before it was implemented, you thought, or the business thought, like, hey, these are some things that we can actually, this is low hanging fruit that we can go after, some of the challenges that we can solve for.
Well, certainly we brainstormed a lot on it. And what actually the learning was is that the outcome of the most effective automation techniques aren't always the ones that you come out with first. So, we started with looking at things like rounding out compliance efforts, things that people don't really want to worry about, new burdens brought to the business due to regulation that were seen as sort of a new task to slow down progress. So to the extent we could automate outreach to candidates for consent and receiving their authorization for things was a smart starting point. And then we looked at how could we use the same approaches to ask for people for updates and information to make sure our records were up to date and keep things recent. And then that really opened our eyes to opportunities around candidate development, which I think is an area where we've seen great success, one that was kind of a lucky happenstance, and really has driven some really strong business bottom line improvements to the organization. So
I've jotted down candidate development because I'd love to learn more context on that. But like, Kade, keep Breck honest. Like, so this is, he mentioned outreach, authorization. Like, is this how did you perceive that would play out in the real world with executives actually receiving this, and what was the hypothesis?
So I think, with the outreach, and this is something I'm probably going to say something controversial depending on the partner, there's always the question when you think about automating the outreach and improving that process that people think you're going to lose that high touch, that you're going to lose the customization. So that was the initial, I think, hypothesis. Like, are we going to lose the customization? Are the candidates going to feel that we're just sending a mass email to everyone? They're just getting another email campaign. And I think what Breck has done great for Boyden and working with us is just providing us with tools that allows us to kind of like have the best of both worlds, while you can really automate a significant part of the process and the candidate outreach and the candidate engagement. You don't need to lose a high touch, and I'll use Sourcewell as a great example that you have options to customize, and at the end the result has been very significant for us and improve response rate. And now my time is just better spent thinking of crafting the best message to get the higher engagement, not having to type all the emails and sending everything manually.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, Kare, I think that's often where when we talk to organizations about automation from the search space, people's mind often jumps to outreach automation and automating a lot of the outreach, because that's what, as leaders, we're exposed to day in, day out. Like everybody on this call is probably getting absolutely slammed in their inbox by these automated messaging tools. But actually, like, not all automation is made the same. And I think a lot of people think that's what automation could mean for their business, and it scares them off because of the brand and reputation damage that might enthrall. But actually, if you can really look through the weeds and find the platforms and the tools and the partners out there that don't automate the wrong parts of the process and do automate the right parts of the process, so you can have more time as a consultant to actually be more targeted and personalized. Like, just on the sort of summary of automation from everybody, the thing that came through was like, we can talk about automation all we want, but if the client and candidate experience isn't at the center of everything we're doing, and we're not continuously checking back to see, like, does this improve the experience? Because if it doesn't, like, we should stop right now. But anyway, I think, yeah, Kara, great point. And from your side, Steve, I don't know if you've got any further ideas on how you go about identifying opportunities for automation in the business.
Well, I mean, all of the comments that have been made so far are exactly. I mean, I make this sort of comment, I think, to Ashton now once or twice at this point, about how there's a dream out there that the recruiters in our space get to spend all of their time talking to people. So it is high touch, right? Keep the conversation real. Have a real phone call or a video call or whatever that might be. And so you're removing all the other noise so we can get down to what's really important. But Breck, to your point, it's sort of being patient with that, and also understanding that there are some other things you have to manage. You made a comment, Breck, that I wrote a note down on, that you said things that you don't expect that you might get from automation that you didn't really intend to get in the first place, and you might end up finding it's another way it can help. I'm going to take it one different step. I won't talk about campaigns and emailing. I'm going to actually talk about just getting information. So what we did a while back was identify some places that we found team members, big surprise, didn't love data entry. And we wanted to figure out, how do we identify that bottleneck, and how do we make it a little bit more efficient? And so what we did is we actually worked, I didn't want to do a bunch of salesy stuff here, but I do want to say we made a move over to Sourcewell at one point. And what we did was we wanted to find a system that allowed us to be able to combine a number of tools and be able to bring a significant amount of information into our system all at once. And that efficiency went from it being, how do we make the day-to-day of a research associate better? How do we make their job more efficient? How do we make it faster? But what, to Breck, your point, things you didn't expect, it also meant we got a heck of a lot more information, which is not one of the things we really were going for. And I mean, seems like a win to me when it's all said and done. So I think those are some of the areas that we're really finding that when you can identify that bottleneck, you can really make a pretty strong impact, not only on the person internally, but also, again, to that client and that candidate.
Yeah, for sure. We, going exactly off what you said, actually, we recently ran a poll amongst all of our customers, and of course we've got the different things that we bring value to different organizations. And one of the main things they said was like the time it just saves consultants and users, and not just the time, but the brain power that they're now saving as well, that they can then spend better on things like actually having good conversations, like not getting your brain fried by 4 p.m. During the day, and not having to sit there just wasting your hours every day updating the CRM. So yeah, 100%. I think it's one of the sort of most underrated value propositions that automation can bring to the business. Because I say a lot of people's minds flip to sort of the stuff you're exposed to all the time, rather than necessarily the unseen stuff. So just going off that, actually, and maybe Breck, I'll come back to you, is now that we've talked a little bit about like how do we go about defining the problem and understanding where the opportunity is, I guess, like, how would you go about identifying and shortlisting and selecting a partner to perhaps work on those opportunities or the problems that you're trying to solve?
Yeah, it's a great question. In terms of our journey, I would say we wanted to surround ourselves by those tools that have made an investment in our technology platform investment. And that was Invenius, because we really saw the opportunity being to bring information into our most important technology platform, which is Invenius, in the most efficient way. There are a lot of interesting tools, good tools, great sales pitches that are isolated from that ecosystem. And that's a major barrier. So large thanks to Ashton and the Invenius team for bringing on and pre-qualifying a lot of high quality vendors, because it allowed us to dig in a way that we could really show the business benefit. When we've looked at other packages, sometimes we make an investment and do an API integration or a custom integration, but those are expensive and time intensive, and so it really is a game changer with the Invenius marketplace. So I think that is one. I also say, don't want to take too much of the airtime without sharing opportunity with my colleagues, but finding the right internal teams to help pilot is very, very important. And one of the learnings that I've had is that, Kari and I work really well together, but I feel like that's sort of a unique circumstance, because Kari is very, very busy. She's very good at her work. She's in high demand, and those types of individuals are not always the best to do a pilot, because they've developed their own processes around efficiency to keep ahead of the workload that's coming at them. And they are not always the most open to new ideas or approaches. Kari is a major exception to that. So, finding the right individuals is important. And I'll show the anecdote that we ran an initial pilot of Source Whale over the course of 6 months and invited three separate teams in, and it happened to be during a very high volume period of our industry, and it didn't get the attention it deserved, and people weren't able to really figure out a new way of working while doing their primary workload. And it wasn't until Kari got involved that she really dug in and saw the opportunity and helped us generate the internal metrics that allowed us to be successful in rolling it out more broadly, which we've absolutely done. So, I would also say, like, not only finding the right individuals to help, but staying the course. If you have a gut feel that something should work, continue to allow it to evolve internally, because at the end of the day, in our industry, we need the individuals who are using the tools to be real advocates for them, for it to be successful. And I apologize, that answer was quite long.
No, that's excellent. And we certainly want to talk about metrics and, what the indicators of success happen to be in a moment. So I've got two things I'm going to come back to a little bit later on, Breck: candidate development and the KPI bit. Steve, how does that compare to Robert Half's process, and like thinking about the challenges and how you solve for that, how you shortlist vendors to say, hey, this is the kind of partner that we need to help us solve these issues?
Yeah. So I think for us, it starts again, that term bottleneck, right? We come back to bottlenecks a lot of times, of where are we seeing places, pain points in the process, pain points within the team, whether that's data entry or otherwise. And so, to Breck's point, the Invenius marketplace has been great. I mean, it's been incredibly helpful for us to be able to identify what tools can work within Invenius, because inevitably, to complicate it where it's separate is just one more tool we have to try to get people to adopt. But if it's connected, then hopefully what we're doing is we're able to identify an ROI. And so I don't know that we're headed towards this question, but I'm just going to throw it out there. I know one of the topics we had
we'll get there.
was around, how do you get people on board, and how do you get them to adopt these different tools? And so one of the ways we started a long time ago was we, like most exec search firms, have different processes to show the efforts that we're putting in front of our clients, whether it's a progress report or a landing page or a CRM website, whatever it might be. And if we can make that process easier for the user on the front end, then inevitably they're more efficient and they're more comfortable and they're more excited to use that system. But if that doesn't exist, adoption becomes incredibly hard, because you have no short-term impact that drives them to go use it, even though there might be this beautiful end goal of the long-term impact of having this well fleshed out, wonderful database. None of that really does anything for you if you can't get them to use it. So I think that's to come back to it, I think the marketplace makes it so that we can really identify those really great places. I think it also it's helpful to take the issues, the bottlenecks you're finding and searching. Honestly, you can get on Google and just start bouncing around and finding things, but inevitably the starting place is what connects to Invenius.
Something, if you don't mind. I'm sorry.
Yeah, come on, Brett. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, just to answer, build on what Steve was saying, is I think you need to provide immediate value to the people that are using the tools that you're going to make their lives easier and better.
Yes.
And their day-to-day better, right? I mean, that's, the bottlenecks that you're finding are the things that create the friction in the workday that people get frustrated with. So if you can find ways around it, you're already on a really great path.
Adam, I see you asked a couple of questions around criteria and deciding whether the pilot was successful. I'm going to ask that to Breck for sure. Kade, how did you start with the list of partners to look at, or did you know, hey, this is the direction that we want to head down, and we're going to see if it works for solving some of the issues that Breck had outlined earlier?
Now that's a great question. I think in general, I like to build the case myself. Like if I don't believe in the tool, if I can confidently say to people and demonstrate with facts, like, and Breck, thank you for allowing me this. He knows that I like to even time myself. I'm that person. I will time myself to see how much time it takes me to do X and then compare it. Because if I don't have a real success story, I can ask a partner and the rest of the consultants that go and learn a new tool, let's go try to figure it out. I need to have concrete evidence of how much time it saved me, how long it took me, what is the learning curve as well. And I've been very lucky that I get to work with Breck a lot, particularly often. We have been having a lot of talks with different tools of potential vendors. And from a user perspective, what I always probably get annoyed at the calls or after the calls is there's a lot of great technology out there. And I know from the technology standpoint is fantastic. But then from the user perspective, that's when I think there's other tools that will make it or break it. And if I use Sourcewell as an example, like I need something that is intuitive, that has a good UX design, that even the partner that barely knows how to use a computer because they're great just talking to people, they could simply just learn how to do it. So anytime that we're kind of like vetting a potential vendor, or if we're thinking about doing a pilot, is what is the learning curve for the team? Is this a tool that's going to be mostly used by the admin team, by the research team, or the partner will need to learn how to do this? And will this be too complicated? Not just to learn, but really get the hang of it. Because always, and I understand that what they tell me is I'm too busy to learn how to do this. Like it takes me more time to stop and learn than just keep doing the same thing. I can disagree with that, but I understand their logic. But then also with this, there's a lot of great technologies, anything around automation and AI. I hear a lot of clients saying, just use AI to make the target company list. I'm like, I still have a job for a reason. There's great tools, but it's not just like that. And I think kind of like when we are evaluating tools, at least myself from the user perspective, is also just the quality of the results, because I think there's a lot of exciting things right now. Anything has the word AI and automation, it feels like a magic solution. And I think oftentimes we also kind of like have to, as users as well, set realistic expectations that there's not a magical AI is not a magical thing. Is how much of my time is saving me in which part of my process, and then let's attest and evaluate what's the quality of those efforts. Either if it's an AI tool that is recommending candidates, what is the quality of the candidates and what's the criteria? If it's an email automation tool, how much is my response rate improving? Which parts of the process am I cutting down if I go and spend the time using this tool? So to me, when I'm vetting a potential tool, is really about how would this actually work in reality. It's all cool that the AI stuff is cool. I love that you have AI, but actually I just need to know what's the quality, how much time is saving me, and how can I implement this. And just to get away from the buzzwords, because I feel everyone just says AI these days and it's supposed to be a magical thing.
I love that. And so it's taking, the ideas of automation, AI, and really translating it into time savings, productivity, and efficiency gains. Breck, there was a question from Adam here on the criteria used to determine who would be a part of that pilot program. You mentioned folks who being really mindful of people's skills and where they are, but would you mind sharing just some more insight on that?
Well, yeah, and I'll say, that our initial pilot almost died on the vine, and that's because the stakeholders that were originally involved weren't able to give it the attention it needed during the time they were involved. And it's not a criticism of those individuals. It just, the timing didn't work. And, you know, the mistake that I made is I reached out to individuals who were sharing with me that they were already overburdened. And, you know, I went to them with the concept of this tool has the promise to save you time. What was missing in that initial rollout of the pilot was an understanding that those individuals that are already overburdened are not going to be able to take time, set back, reevaluate how they work, consider a new tool, develop a new way of working, then run it, test it, and plan it out. And Kari is the exception because she was extraordinarily busy, but yet she's just very process oriented, and she was the perfect person for it. So I think in a way we got lucky. Sourcewell got lucky because we went from an account of 4 to now quite a much larger deployment, and because we were able to get to the real world sort of examples. And I would say that the tool is not perfect for every working team. Some people really have, you know, a hands-on methodical approach and are not interested in making a change. And what we found for the Sourcewell tool, which I think is kind of unique in the automation concepts, because it requires a new way of thinking about your workday and outreach to candidates to get the benefits and the results. In other instances of automation where it's, I click a button and the computer does 4 things that I had to do manually before, that's sort of a whole different use case, right? And in one that you know, someone doesn't have to be mindful of. Sourcewell does require a bit of a mindful consideration and refocusing a strategy of your workday to make it successful. Kari, would you agree?
Yeah, and I'll even add to that because I remember when we first had the first conversations with a couple of offices, just talking, here's the amazing tool we now have. This is great. You know, we significantly increase our response rate. It's amazing. Then in the demos and having the trainings, people will ask me, but where do I click? Like, where do I click to, you know, increase my response rate? It's like, well, it's not like you click on something. Like, now you'll have the time to think about the best message because you're not spending X amount of hours typing the emails and adding to Invenias. Is sync with Invenias. Like, what you're now gaining is time. And so you can dedicate to the things that add value, not just automating tasks. So even for I think the first 3 offices we talked, we quickly had to learn, and again, all things to brag. It's like, maybe we just need to talk as how much time we're saving. And then I'll start sharing examples of messages that work, but because I spent an hour or more in that message, because now I have the time, I have extra time apparently. So it was even changing the way how we communicate with the users and how we explain the tool itself. And I think that happens with every tool. Again, now with the AI thing, it's like, this is an AI tool. What is allowing you just to save time on this? So now maybe you start your day, instead of going to PitchBook to create your target company list, you start here and then you think differently how you look at candidates, how you assess a profile, or how you reach out to candidates. So it's even when talking with the users, and I know we'll get there to how to actually get the implementation, is we have to check ourselves and how do I explain this in a way? Because if not, the expectation is too high that they think it's like, where am I supposed to click so I get more response rates? I don't see the button that says higher response rate.
Right. So there's a certain mindfulness. Ben, I know you're ready to go. So go ahead. I know you've got questions to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna follow on from that because I think like I just remember seeing the feedback from the initial pilot and going, wow, that's a lot, isn't it? I think we learned as much as you did on that one. So no, I'm glad we went through it. And I think one of the key things is about trying to find like the aha moments early on for the consultants and the stakeholders that you're getting in. And I think that's where we did a lot of learning off the back of the pilot that we ran with you guys, and that we actually, that aha moment can be one of 2 things. It can be the increase in reply rate, or it can be the saving of time through automatically ingesting profiles into Invenius, for example. And actually, like, we were putting the cart before the horse in some cases, and actually we now focus very much on like, hey, let's save you that time up front so you can then have more time to actually go and think about the messaging side of things. I think, Steve, that's probably where I think you've probably made the most use of Sourcewell, is very much around sort of the time saving and data ingestion piece, which I think you're running on. How did you go about implementing that, and what were sort of the lessons that you learned from implementing it?
So, Kari, I think you were the one that said that you timed yourself, right? And we actually we did some of the same. We had teammates that we were able to have that we identified as people that we believed could test it and really give Sourcewell and other tools a shot and really see what they could do. And we had asked a number of people, and one individual comes to mind, one of our data people, Tony, who might even be on this webinar. He actually helped us go through and time a lot of those individual pieces. And he tried like 6 or 7 different tests and examples, and like really showing what this could do over these other situations. And inevitably, we were able to identify that certain tools were saving us a significant more time, as well as able to save us and gather us a heck of a lot more data. So once we had that information, we're able to then use it to sort of, I'm going to use the word sell, but I don't want to make it sound like it was a hard sell. It wasn't, but to be able to sort of sell it to the rest of our research team to identify just how strong that tool could really be. And the good news is we by letting those individuals test, I'm coming back to Adam's question about how we identify those folks. I think it's you sort of start with what you know already about the people in your team and what you already know about that culture. And then we would often do a lot of things where we would just ask, what tools do you use that we aren't using? And then you can kind of start telling which people are a little bit more invested in trying different technologies and who are willing to poke around. Or I always like to joke, I think the people that are the best in this space and are most willing to learn and try new tools are the ones that see the big red button and they know not to press that, but they want to test every other button around that red button. And so those are the ones that are often, the most prepared to take on new tools and new things like this.
Yeah.
I love the idea of internally, I'd say, casting the vision and influencing others to start to think about, what the world of the possible is, right? Like when you start to adopt some of these technologies. Breck, you mentioned going from 4 users to, an undisclosed number, but significantly larger than 4. How do you do that? How did you go about scaling that implementation from a pilot to something that is much wider across the business?
Well, we have a somewhat unique culture, but we're very individually led, in terms of use and adoption. So we knew that we couldn't go to people and say, you must use the tool. Also, the tool is not inexpensive. It's well worth it, but has true ROI if used correctly. But we knew that if it wasn't used, it was going to be an expensive tool in the hands of people that were begrudgingly dragging their feet. So we really wanted to convince people to use it. So we really needed to go out with true key metrics and open their eyes and have a snowball effect of colleagues and friends of theirs within the firm seeing the opportunity and help evangelize and push forward with the rollout and the success. And we have seen it snowball. Again, hasn't been perfect for every team, but the vast majority that use it do like it. And we get feedback from some of our offices that there may be 2 to 3 applications on their computer that they would quit if they had it taken away, one being LinkedIn Recruiter, second being Sourcewell. So it really is true. And I think, one of the anecdotes that I feel is fair to say that was an eye opener for us in our evaluation. Again, it was sort of a lucky happenstance outcome rather than the expectation, was the realization of what people knew in their hearts but hadn't seen necessarily in their business practice. And that's that candidate development really does follow the B2B marketing trend of requiring 3 to 4 touch points for an individual to respond. So it's very similar to, if you were going to market a car, right?
Right.
Or a professional service, the same really does apply to candidate development. And so the tool that Sourcewell provides allows you to preset follow-up emails on a prescribed timeline. They can be highly personalized and set up in advance. So you kind of think about your strategy on the day that you're trying to reach out to a candidate, and you'll have a follow-up message that gets sent in 4 weeks if that someone hasn't replied yet. And we've seen it really takes 3 to 4 touch points. And it was something that I think our teams had reservations about. Both it's very time intensive to schedule and remember who to follow up with, who hasn't responded, and others. And also, people didn't want to offend the executives. So, am I pushing too hard? So what we were finding is that people were going back to a recruitment process, putting more names in an inefficient funnel rather than making the most efficient gains with their initial slate of candidates, which tend to be the better candidates anyway for the role. And so that realization was really large for the organization. I think it really helped us sell it internally because it just makes common sense after you think about it.
Steve, I know that your use case is slightly different, but same question to you. Like, how did you go about internally convincing the business that this is the right move for Robert Half Executive Search?
Well, let me start by saying, with everyone that's on this call, and Breck, you and I think had a laugh about this the other day. Your salespeople are the hardest ones to convince, and frankly, I would argue that we still haven't quite convinced them. It's very much, and it's not to any detriment to themselves. Kari and Breck, you both mentioned this earlier, that there is their time investment is a question mark on whether or not the thing that we're able to provide is worth their time in the first place, right? And so it is very hard to make that shift. So I'm going to answer your question, Ashton, more around how we've been able to do it on our side. And again, I think it all comes in with that short-term result. We are able to identify places where we can see a space to move faster, more efficiently. And a line I say to my team a lot is be better than the computer. So really what you're trying to do is you want to implement these different tools and these different things that, again, make the day-to-day easier, but open you up to be able to have better, stronger, faster conversations to get us to a more efficient end and a more efficient close. But as far as getting that adoption piece, again, I would just start with what can you I think the easiest place is probably to start with something simple, something that you can get them to see that value early on. And then if you can get them to see it, then they see the bigger picture. So if you can start with something easy, one of the ways we started off was just identifying ways to manage capacity. And, I won't get to all the specific tools, but I'll just say, we've been able to find ways to manage things like that across our team by automating a lot of that process. And I think if you can start there, or somewhere similar where it's just small, and then start trying to identify new areas to do that, then you start to build a lot more confidence from the team. And then you almost don't have to sell it. They're almost like, oh, right, that last 3 things we did, it did work. So maybe I'm willing to give this one a shot as well. So the successes start to go on top of each other. And last but not least, Breck, I want to make a mention. You mentioned it almost died on the vine. It almost did for us too. And I think it took a lot of investment and time to get it there. I think for anyone that's beginning this journey, I would just expect some things to die on the vine. You are going to have tools or automations or processes you try to implement that you think sound great, and they may flop. Don't give up. It's just a matter of sort of reevaluating the situation and see if there's a different way to go about it. So I hope that answers your question, Ashton. I went on a bit of a rant there, but yeah.
No, absolutely. And I cannot believe that 43 minutes have gone by so quickly. I mentioned, sitting by the beach having a conversation, and Ben making pina coladas for everybody, of course. Time really does fly, and we can spend hours talking about this. Kade, I almost want to wrap up with with success. How did you define success? Like, what were some of the metrics that made you feel and maybe it's on the time saving side. Hey, it's just, rather than taking us 8 hours, it took us 30 minutes or whatever that may be. But like, want to hear from you and from the others as well. Like, how did you determine, hey, this is something that can really make a big difference in the business and is making a big impact on us positively?
Of course, now that's a great question. And I think it's a combination of having those time saving pieces that I do want to be able to say we save X amount of hours, we save X amount of effort, and that definitely helps. But I think what for me has been helpful talking with some of my colleagues across Boyden and other offices is just showing them, what can I do and what happens when I have this additional extra time, and what happens when I have the time to really focus on the tasks and areas where I can actually add value. So if I think of the Sourcewell example, and we were able to increase significantly the response rate. We're saving a decent amount of hours weekly. But really how that translated is that I'm actually talking to less people, contacting less candidates, because I now get to only focus on quality. It doesn't mean that I do less hours of research. I actually do more hours of research now, but it's very target,
Wow.
very focused. And I only contact the best of the best, because I spend a decent amount of time making sure that I'm only talking to the best of the best. So when I was talking with offices, and I get this, I think still every day someone asks me about Sourcewell or any of the tools, it's
Yeah.
not just the time saver, but what that has allowed me to do now. So now I call less people. If anyone goes through my assignments in the last 2 years, less and less and less candidates, but higher response rate, higher quality, less time to close the search. So is
Wow.
what happens after you get more time, and that how you tell that story. And to me, it's all about the evidence. If someone tells me this is great, but I want to know about like how much, like give me a real example. I want to see the case study. And for me has been able to share that story, that I just go start opening campaigns and start open assignments. Like just look at my assignments. It took me this amount of time to close the search. By week X, I had candidates. Now just focus on quality. I don't need to do quantity anymore, because I just get to the right people. And
Love
this is
that.
the example with Sourcewell, but any tool or any sort of automation, even something simple like Calendly, now I can show like I can organize my calendar differently, because now I have the time to talk to more people, and now it's simplified the way how I decide how much time I put to each search is based on the settings on my Calendlys. So it's about what you do after saving that time, and how you really start approaching your work differently, where you see the real benefit. And I think that's what people buy at the end. Like, I don't need to hear like stuff X amount of hours. I just want to know, where am I adding value? How can I do things differently? How can I move faster?
Where am
And
I
if-
adding value? And you got a big old hallelujah from an amen from Luis over there. So
And
Steve.
if I could just add, I'm just
Oh, go
sorry,
ahead,
just
Brett. Come on. Yeah,
not to
Go
plug
ahead.
Kare because she's not
Yeah.
on the market, but I'll say that her willingness and openness to try new things, and then reinvest the time savings for more efficiency gains, and selling that forward within the organization has been very supportive to her career growth at Boyden. I'll just, I think I see that, and hopefully, Kara, you feel it. But I mean, because I think that a lot of times there's fear when I speak to people about automation of like, what will this take away from me? And I just encourage people that are in the webinar to think about what could I bring to the organization by trying something slightly different, take some bold leaps, be able to fail, allow for failure within your organization, and then really embrace those that are helping move change within the organization. And not think of it as I'm going to be my job's going to be taken away. Your job is actually going to just become higher value in a lot of instances.
Steve.
All of that is very well said. I mean, I don't want to by any means dehumanize any of this, right? Because I think at the end of the day, that's the reality. Breck, I love that last sentence you said, where the positions become, your position becomes more valuable. And funny enough, what it actually does is turn that person into somebody that can do more because of these tools. So it's not so much taking away, it's more giving you back time to be able to be more successful and be able to and by the way, also potentially edge out some additional work-life balance in the mix of all of this. I mean, there's a lot of positives. I'll go one step further, and Kara, we talked to you mentioned timing yourself and things like that. One of the other pieces of advice I would say is to think about it from an angle of, if you can impact one search by saving, let's say, a half hour of time on that one search, and you know that a recruiter is spending anywhere between that extra half hour and saving, and they're taking on 5 or 6 searches at a time, you're saving that one person anywhere from 2 to maybe 3 hours of time weekly. Now, if you extrapolate that over a month, you've now saved that person 6 to 12 hours within a month period of time. Now you multiply that by the number of recruiters you have, and suddenly we're saving ourselves 30, 40 hours to 100, 200 hours of time in that period. it's more capacity, it's more space, it's more time, it's so many things that it can be incredibly impactful and useful on. And again, I think the mistake that oftentimes happens with technology is that people want to see it as almost the enemy, and that is really the trick here, is to treat it as a tool. And I think if you can use these tools to make yourself more efficient, then inevitably the whole team is more successful. So I think that's realistically the way we always try to look at it in our group.
What an enjoyable conversation this has been. We're 5 minutes over, so we'll look to wrap this up. Steve, Kata, Breck, thank you so much for your insight, and hopefully everybody who's in attendance was able to take some nuggets from this and some ideas as to how you can start looking at implementing automation, understanding some of the challenges you're going through, and also appreciating that some will work out really well and some may not. But the idea is to keep pressing forward, because there is an efficiency to unlock. And Ben, I know you have a few words as well that you like to wrap up with.
I know you're going to do. I'm not going to do a sales. So I think we've talked so much about Sourcewell today. I didn't expect to, but yeah, I think just echoing some of the points raised. I think that the key thing we learned early on when we're working with organizations is also like try and get some of the users involved in that buying process, because then they're going to have their own buy-in through. They feel like it's part of their choice to bring this in, and therefore they're far more invested in adoption. That's one of the key things I'd leave everybody with. Yeah, again, thank you everybody for joining from the panel as well. And yeah, everyone knows about Sourcewell now. It's there to basically make sure that you automate the right things, people can spend more time being more personalized, targeted, and actually giving the white glove treatment. It's really that simple.
Excellent. So head over to sourcewell.com if you'd like to learn more information about Sourcewell. You can go to invenius.com if you're not an Invenius customer yet. We'd love to have conversations with you, and you can reach out to Steve, Kata, and Breck on LinkedIn. I'm sure they'd be happy to connect. Thank you all again so much. Have a great rest of your day, and look forward to meeting again in a few weeks when we do the Executive Search Summit. More on that to come. Thank you all so much.